Yo, Ryan O, behavior analyst and creator, all things behavior analysis. Welcome to Daily BA. We nerd out on psychology here, and today's topic is a sort of introduction to one small way you can think about impulsive behavior and self-control. All right, so every day we are presented with situations that have important implications for our quality of life, like all the time. Things like waking up in the morning and working out prior to work or after work, whenever I guess you work out, or taking a midday break to walk, spending time with our loved ones, planning for financial security and success, consuming things like social media or alcohol at reasonable levels. Like, you get it, right? These decisions, these points in which we are faced with a day-to-day decision that can lead to short-term pleasures or long-term pleasures, or worse, short-term pleasures for, I guess, at the expense of long-term stress. This happens to be one of, if not the most important thing that people individually across the globe struggle with: self-control and impulsivity. I know I do. So what are we talking about exactly? Well, when you look up impulsive behavior in Google, impulsive is defined as acting or done without forethought, or acting as an impulse. Side note, don't you love it when they do that circular thing? Like, impulsivity is when you're being impulsive. And it's like, I don't understand, because impulsive then means impulsivity, and impulsivity means impulsive. Right? Confusing, circular reasoning, bad logic. So when we look up impulse, it's a sudden, strong, or unreflective urge or desire or act, or a driving or motivation force and impetus. This can lead us down one of two paths. First of all, looking within ourselves, trying to find our impulsiveness and our self-control, looking inward, or looking around you, looking at the situations and events that led to your being impulsive or having self-control. For me, that latter, that second path, seems to be much better. Not just because it takes the blame off of me, when in reality it actually doesn't, you'll see in a second, but because it's actually been shown to work. But also, we've yet to find where impulsivity lies. Like, is it here? Is it in my brain? Is it in my mind? Like, those things haven't been discovered. There are correlates that may happen, such as certain areas of the brain that fire up, but how practical is it, or how useful is it for you? I can't measure and alter my brain waves at the moment. I mean, maybe in the future, Neuralink and that crazy stuff might be able to allow us to do these things. But as it stands now, right, we've got to figure out what to do. So this stance that I'm communicating is that of behavior analysis. Our field looks at the influence of everything that you do as a result of the interactions with the things, well, around you, your environment. So impulsive behavior is something that is a result of certain circumstances occurring around you that are enticing this impulsive or self-control type behavior. Note here, the person doesn't get off for the behavior they engage in, because it just means that the environment is a part of what influences you. So it's more of a holistic perspective. So the question then moves to, what can we do about our environment? How can we measure the circumstances and become aware of the situations that influence us to be more or less impulsive? And this is tricky, but the first step is looking at the world around you, the people, the places, the things that trigger your impulsivity, and beginning to determine through counting, measuring how often you succumb to them, or under what conditions you find yourself, to be able to overcome your impulsiveness. And I want to talk about one specific situation in which this is studied. It's called delay discounting, which I'm actually going to read you a pitch from this book because, well, they say it way better than I did. I've got an astigmatism. Delay discounting is the process by which future events are subjectively devalued by the decision maker. And this process is thought to underlie some forms of impulsive decision making. Consider the classic research study by Walter Mischel and his colleagues at the Bing Nursery School at Stanford University. Preschoolers were given a choice between receiving a large reward, such as 2 marshmallows, on the return of the experimenter, or at any time during the delay, foregoing the larger reward by accepting smaller but immediately available rewards. 1 marshmallow. You can imagine a lot of children had a hard time actually waiting for the 2 marshmallows, and they'd select the one that was in front of them. What's more interesting is, in a longitudinal follow-up, preschoolers' duration of waiting before selecting the smaller, sooner reward was predictive of academic and social competence in adolescence. Preschoolers who waited longer were more likely than their more impulsive peers to become adolescents who more successfully coped with stress and frustration, demonstrated better abilities to concentrate and maintain attention, and better responded to reason, and even scored higher on the SAT. Pretty crazy, right? So what's this look like? Is there a way that we can visualize this a little bit? And I'm gonna show you one way. All right, let's hop over the tablet here. I can draw and we can follow along. So first of all, orient yourself anytime you look at a graph to the axes. First of all, x-axis, delay in number of months. Y-axis, discounted value, all right? So the value of something being at its max, meaning that you want that thing, you will behave with respect towards it to be able to get it. at 100 up here, all the way down to 0 at the bottom. And then we can orient. So both of these lines would be a way to look at the likelihood that we are to engage in some sort of behavior, all right? And each possible impulsive or self-control sort of habit or behavior pattern that we're engaging in will have their own line. And they draw two different ones here. This thick line here is looking at something that the value of that delay, waiting for that delay, regardless of what it is, you're not going to wait quite as long. The probability of you waiting for that larger reward decreases. So the sharper the drop, like we see here, the more likely it is that you're gonna engage in getting the shorter term value reward, because it drops in the probability of that value being worthwhile for you to wait. This other behavior pattern is represented by a dashed line. And for this one, the key thing here is that it is not as steep of a drop off. So if we looked at the probability of you waiting 10 months for these two different behavior patterns for the value, you are more likely to wait for the second one because the probability of that is still, say, I don't know, somewhere around 60%, right? And this one right here is actually sitting more at your 20%. And what's interesting is that each of us would demonstrate some sort of curve or pattern like this, how quickly it is that we would act towards different types of reward. And that curve depends on the time and the specific situation that we are in and what behavior it is that we're engaging in. So said another way, each context and each behavior of ours would have a different decay rate and a different pattern. That is, the probability of us engaging in something immediately and being impulsive or waiting is really dependent on the context and our individual delayed discounting curves for each behavior pattern. You see how this can get really crazy really quick. So what do you do with this? First, knowledge is power. Knowing about this way of looking at impulsive behavior is the first step to action. So congratulations for making it this far. Second, if you're a behavior nerd like me, then check this book out, Impulsivity, Greg Madden, editor and Warren. It's a little outdated, not much. It's not like as of this year in the current research, but it's still great. And you can dive into it. I've got it linked down below. And then third, well, I'll leave you with this sort of thought experiment. Who do you think knows most about impulsivity? Your impulsivity? Is it you, your loved ones, your friends? Or how about the various platforms like YouTube or perhaps Google, Twitter, Facebook? Pick any of the large organizations that compile data. What do you think they know? I'm worried they have my impulsivity understood far better than I do. I'd also be curious about how you try to curb your impulsivity, how you measure it, and what you think about this way of looking at some of what people call impulsivity, at least under this delayed discounting paradigm. I hope you learned something. Like, share, subscribe. It actually makes a difference, like it actually helps. And you can support me at the top link down below. It's called Patreon. That's your daily BA.